Hello and welcome to our viewers on cruxinvestor.com. We talked earlier today to Dev Randhawa, he's the CEO of Fission Uranium. We asked him for an update on the company and the various studies that he's been carrying out, and he talks to us about UR energy and energy fuels and whether the whole 232 petition has backfired on him. He also gives us his opinion on lobbyists, East versus West geopolitics, and tells us why he thinks the US has got this completely wrong. We also talked to him about money and raising money later this year and what's next for Fission Uranium. If you want to look at any of these topics, look in the description below and click on the relevant timestamp. And for those of you who are new to Crux Investor, please click the button in the corner of the screen and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hi Dev, how are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me on.
No, it's great to see you again. We spoke, I think, when you were in London for the one-to-one conference. So give us an update, give us the 1 minute summary of what's been happening since we met back in May.
It's basically like the whole series of Seinfeld, much about nothing, because
Right.
all of us, the producers, future producers, exploration companies, utilities, everybody has been sitting very quietly waiting for this crazy petition 232, and your timing is impeccable. In that you're seeing this morning a massive drop in the two producers who went forward to the U.S. government
Yes.
and asking them, demanding help, so that America isn't susceptible to basically. They didn't come out and say it, and I'll say it. They're afraid that Russia will tell Kazakhs, hey, or any other country, don't give any uranium to the United States,
Yeah.
and therefore we should produce our own. And in return, we want quotas, blah, 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 and etc.
You're very open about it. There was, you called bullshit on it, and we'll get into that in a sec. But let's talk about your company now. Obviously, yeah, a lot of you are sort of treading water. I guess all of you are roughly, I don't know, 20, 30% down on the year, but it's consistent. But let's remind everyone what you've got. Okay, you told me it's a bit of a freak. It's a high grade deposit in one of the best uranium producing districts in the world. So let's start with the company.
Like I said, as this thing goes, there's no quotas. No one will benefit more than Canadian companies. It is simply because we are not friends of Russia, and we've got the advantage of massive grades. The grades in Canada are really what put it up there in the same status as Kazakhstan. We simply live in a Western democracy. We got to be careful about our environment. It takes a while for permitting, but Canadian companies can compete with anybody, and the reason is our grade. So the advantage so all Canadian companies have grade. We have a great jurisdiction, a great province of Saskatchewan. The difference that Fission has over our competitors immensely is that we're 1/10 of the depth our deposit is compared to the areas around us. Canada's always had those high grades, but first time in 60 years, someone's come along and put a hole down and said, holy crap, this is like 50 meters from surface versus 500.
So basic rules in mining still apply. The nearer the surface, the less the costs. Doesn't matter whether it's uranium, copper, gold, you name it. So even by uranium,
it's not just less cost; it's less technical challenge. Okay, so you got to have grade. I mean, look at the best performing gold stocks. What was it? Kirkland, grade matters. So, but everybody has that. But the problem is, when someone spends $1 billion, $2 billion to buy you, they're always looking at risk, and how do you mine, 500 meters down, which is what the other deposits are, 400 to 500, and so it's not just cheaper; there's just less risk. And when big companies are making these big decisions, that certainly comes into play, because the basin I can name you 5 deposits in the basin that are high grade in Saskatchewan, but you know what? No one's touched them, because they got their metallurgy problems, or it's just who has the expertise. And frankly, only Cameco, in my view, really has that expertise. And they've got MacArthur sitting on the sidelines. So there's not going to go out and buy us or NextGen or anybody. They got their plate full for many years. So I think the main thing is that it's less not less costly, but less technical risk. And these big companies don't like risk.
So that's really interesting. It's something that we haven't discussed before. We've spoken to a few sort of new entrants into the uranium space in the Athabasca Basin. So it's not necessarily a home run because you're in the Athabasca Basin. There's some other issues, right? So for investors, you need to understand that, right?
Well, look at the Millennium. It's 1%, but it's still a pretty good deposit. It's deep. Cameco hasn't touched it. Midwest, it's got some metallurgy issues. It's really an arsenic mine with a credit for uranium. Hasn't been touched. And if you look, and people say history's history. Well, history teaches you something. You look at Key Lake, Clough Lake. These projects were found at the same time as others, but they were close to surface. Boom, mined right away, taken out. Areva, to tell you how important was to have a shallow deposit like Clough Lake. Clough Lake is just north of our project. Only had 48 million pounds, and they built a whole mill just for it. And the government put in a road 365 days a year it runs. So it really does matter. People always talk about grade, but in the basin, it's not enough because it's littered with projects that are deep. But when they're that deep, it takes expertise. It's not like copper. Uranium has to be mined robotically for the most part. I was told by people at Cameco, anything over 300 meters, you need robots. Maybe you're in a basement, you don't. But I'm just saying, generally, you need robots to mine that stuff.
Okay, so I'd say that's an interesting note of caution to people looking at some of these newer players. Be aware of that before you invest. Interesting, because there will be, as we know about the demand supply deficit in this space. So there will be new companies coming in. Be careful. Okay, now just remind people about what you've got. 140 million pounds inferred, indicated. You've got a very low ASIC. Because technically it's close to surface. You're at that point. I think you told me you had a PFS on the underground and a BFS on the open pit, and you're looking at doing a full feasibility study for later this year. When's the timing on that?
We've done a pre-feas on the project. We came up with a hybrid model, and just to be safe, I think we're going to do another PFS. It won't take much, a few $100,000 and a few months to do it on the underground as well. The underground eliminates about 300 million off the cost, and the costs only go from 670 to 720. So it's still a world-class project, but it will take certainly less money than expected. Right. And part of it is too, that some groups, but it starts at 50 meters, right? So you don't have to freeze anything, and we're definitely in basement rock. Like I said, in this part of the world, we're the only project that does not have any kind of sandstone on top. We're the only project with no sandstone at all. All other projects have some.
Okay, so two more things on the company I want to understand, which is you obviously, while you're waiting around to see what happens, and even when there is a decision, whatever that may be, the impact on you is not immediate necessarily. You just don't know.
Yeah, I do think though that it will help companies like ourselves, any Canadian producer. I looked at my stock today. Before I came on, NextGen's up a little. We got punished downwards, and I think we'll people say, "Oh, okay, Canadian uranium is good as U.S. uranium," right? And if that's the case, even Kazakh, it'll help us because it won't lift up. It won't lift up the U.S. stuff. So we're equal again. We're back where we should be. People competing, a mano, not with corporate handouts, protection, and bullshit like that. To me, that's just wrong.
Well, let's get into that in a second. So just finish off on that. So your burn rate is what? What are you working your way through? You got $10 million circa.
We've only got 10 million left, which obviously we did nothing to last forever. But we burn rate between standard 300,000 to 400,000 with everything all in, the way they count everything, stock options. But we were ready to do a funding about 3-4 months. We've been offered a funding a week. the problem is flow through funds want house brand names like Fission and Denison, and so they'll rather give money to them because they're going to be around rather than a little company. The other problem is little companies, their micro caps are so small they can't give them much money. So we're one of their favorites. We've been offered money, but because you can do summer work right through October up in the Basin, we wanted to wait for this decision to come out, and we'll have it worst case Monday. So next week, I'll be on the phones, see where the stock is at, and have a board. We have a board meeting, and we'll make a decision. We'll raise funds. I've been talking to the usual suspects, the banks, even we've spoken to some debt people. So that's what I've been doing the last while, saying, hey, any day there will be a decision. I don't know what the decision is, but I know uncertainty will leave. Stocks, I think, will generally move up a little, and we'll raise some money. So there's not a shortage of money. It was just a corporate decision by the company to see what happens.
Well, yeah, it's a cost of money decision, isn't it? You don't need it now. You could wait till the end of the year, quite frankly, by the sounds of it, and beyond. But what's the cost that money against share price? So again, normal mining rules apply. I get it. So that kind of answers my next question, which was about we did talk previously about raising some cash, but you don't need to do that now. So let's get into it today. Actually, just before we got on the call, the markets went a little bit crazy for Energy Fuels and UR Energy. Looked like they've lost 25-30% of their stock price. What's happened? Do you know?
Well, I think so. I don't know. I mean, obviously somebody knows something that none of us do. Some people think, obviously got a tip somewhere along the way, or maybe it's a bad rumor. Who knows? I don't trade the stocks. It's not my thing. But obviously someone thinks that they're not going to get a quota. Okay, anybody with finished high school could have solved this one. Tell me one commodity in the world where there was a partial quota on 25%. Give me one.
Yeah.
The thing was a joke from day one. I was pissed off at Jeff for doing it. I was pissed off at Amir for joining along. I like those guys. Jeff and Amir have worked very, very hard to build those companies from scratch. And they're like brothers to me. But it doesn't mean I can love them, but I don't have to love what they do. And that was my opinion. Stupid. It was a selfish move to get their stocks pumped up for a while, whatever. Well, guess what? It worked. But in the long run, what business works when you piss off your customers? And I talked to some people within Kazakh, and when they went around America, the thing that stuck out to them is how pissed off the producers were at those guys. But I think in defense of Amir and Jeff, I think they thought, oh, this will help us get higher prices and we can, do this. What they didn't realize, I think the butterfly effect was that the U.S. producers were afraid to buy any uranium. They just stopped buying uranium, and Fukushima didn't stop or lower demand for uranium, because today we have more reactors being built, more used. We need 195 million pounds. We needed only 145 when I started. So demand for uranium has gone up. Fukushima didn't stop any of that. What Fukushima did was change the way contracting is done. No longer do you have the long-term discipline of the Japanese in the market. Instead, you've got short-term. Like last year, 90 million pounds were bought on spot. That's almost half, 50% of all uranium that was needed last year. Remember, we needed 195, we produced about 140. But 190 of us all contracted at spot. Now, when I got into the business, it wasn't 50%, it was more like 10, 15%. So what that tells you is contracting has changed. And so Fukushima didn't lower demand for uranium because the uranium demand has gone up. It's the way people contract. I believe without the Japanese long-term thinking, we've got Western utilities who don't want to carry, don't want to have money tied up on anything else. So they're very short-term thinkers than they were. And I think and last year, from what I'm told, it was really the Western utilities that drove the price from, $20 to 30. And then when they backed off the buying after this petition was filed, they came back down. And so now they're going to be able to come back in. One thing nobody ever likes is uncertainty. And unfortunately, whether it's human nature or whatever it is, people assume the worst. So they think, oh my gosh, it could go to Trump for 25%. And you'll say, oh shit, 100% of the uranium has to be all US made, right? I'm just saying. So what happened is, I think that so they backed right off. Uranium prices fell all the way down to 24. But we knew it wasn't much, that was just a fictitious market because Mechanical said they tried to buy 1 million pounds, they couldn't get it. They have to drive it right back up. So this 25 has never been real. It's just because, but I think if there's no quotas, then you will see, I believe, the U.S. producers going in. It's all built up. I've heard from some traders it could go as high as 40 when it starts to move. So, you know, to me, they should have. The quota was a stupid idea, selfish idea, and more importantly, and I know Jeff and those guys well enough as to know that I don't think they meant for uranium prices to drop to 30, and I don't think they were trying to be malicious towards Canadians or anything else. But as I said before, you know, there is that tendency today, and for a lot of big decisions, people no longer make a decision because of something, because of fear of something. So I think they tried to do that, didn't work.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's an interesting point you raised there because, you know, in all other commodities, you've kind of got this free market economy, okay? You know, if you're good at something, you do it and you sell it to the market. If you're not so good, you don't do that thing, you do the thing you're good at. Now, because of the fear component, the security issue, which I know you've called bullshit on a few different platforms, you know, that's clearly affecting the geopolitics of this specific commodity. I get it, and we've discussed it. But there's one other factor I want to kind of bring in here. So, not only is America not producing enough uranium for its own needs, so it does have to deal with the rest of the world. There's going to be friendly jurisdictions like Canada, Australia, possibly parts of Africa. You know, they don't have to deal with Kazatomprom. But I'm reading articles that, you know, the nuclear reactor industry, it is in part or subsidized at federally or at state level at the reactor for the reactors. Okay, now if they're being because we always read about wind and solar being subsidized, but you know no one talks about nuclear being subsidized, and you've got a number of reactors due. Well, I think the phrase was, you know, will not be able to survive economically beyond 2021 if they do not continue to get help. Won't that put a lot of if that funding or that subsidy doesn't continue? Isn't that another pressure point? But it's 20. We're talking about 1/3 of the reactor fleet here. It's not insignificant.
Yeah, it's not significant, but I think it's overdone. Americans are really good at blowing up shit. You know, like take a little issue and make it into big. That's one of the. I do think I don't see it because look, you can't. The natural gas, if people do want clean energy that actually works, renewables will never ever touch close for two reasons: not economical, and number two, no baseload power. And, you know, despite all this bullshit that we've heard about renewables over the years, what are we at? 1-2%. Are you kidding me?
Is that 1-2% globally, or is that 1-2%? Because the number in the number in the States is it's on par with nuclear at the moment, right? In 2018.
Not a chance.
No?
Not a effing chance. It's 20% nuclear. It's maybe 3-4%. Economically, it should be -5. Look, Obama did his best to prop up his socialist buddies, and between almost $1 trillion, I believe, I've been told by some people, went into trying to help renewables. And every company he helped within 18 months was dead. All the solar companies were all dead because you can't. But you know, Gore along the way picked up $300 million. Happy for him. So it didn't work. It's not 20%. Look, I'm not saying nuclear is the be-all answer, but if you want clean energy, it has baseload power and movable. You have to understand Japan and Korea are little islands. They don't have hydro. They don't have those options. I just believe, and the brightest of all is China. They're growing fast and hard. And what have they learned? They may not care about polar bears in Canada, but they certainly care about clean energy, have less cleaner air out there. So to me, it's not the be all answer, but it has to be a mix. But that's a complete joke. I could use some crazy examples to get my point through.
I hear you, but a lot of lobbyists are involved. I'm looking, well, actually, interesting point. So I'm looking at
it stands for lied payers, but keep going.
It's okay, but I'm looking at the money thrown at this. So if I'm looking at the amount of money that gas, fossil fuels, other energy supplies, including the renewables, solar, wind, they're spending in the tens, if not hundreds of millions of bucks on lobbyists. How much do you think was spent by the uranium nuclear industry last year?
Hardly at all, because they're ballless in my view. But you know what? Okay, well, where's the growth though? As Tim Getzel always says, we're not. If you want to talk about uranium, you have to have two stories: East versus West. India, China are going, oh, that's cute. We're going over here. We want clean, cheap energy. That we actually want real green energy. They don't have gas. It's East versus West. Key. Wonder why Saudi Arabia is building reactors. Haven't figured that one out. I guess they just too much money. The Emirates. Wonder why all these guys are doing that. I don't know. I guess
guys with all the solar.
Yeah. Because here's the thing. It has nothing to do with. It has to do with an issue of the politics. The politics are, and the problem is, especially in Europe, the way you guys vote over there is absolutely insane. So not you guys, but especially like over in Germany, and they're all representational. Nobody has a majority. So we've seen it in BC here. We had a party with 2 votes completely dictate our economy through their garbage policies. And every time government tries to get involved, they screw it up, right? Because they don't think beyond this vote. So if you take out the guys who put up their finger every year, oh, geez, what do we need to get elected again, stay in power and screw the masses? Let's move over here a little bit. But the reality is they're all jokes. France got to power by saying, we're going to reduce nuclear. What did they announce this year? That will happen in 10 years down the road. So they make these promises, then they go, holy shit, we got to shut down our economy if we take out nuclear. Well, we need more fuel. Then we have more pollution. They change. Germany, what do these idiots do? They spend almost $1 trillion getting somewhere. They're going, it didn't work. Darn it. Shucks. I wonder what happened. And then what they do, they buy the uranium, they buy nuclear power from France and Czechoslovakia is loving. They're going, hey, guess what? We'll build it and you buy it 3 times what we get it for. Great idea. Unfortunately, politics is a big part of the West. In the East, it's Maslow hierarchy of needs says until you have food, shelter, energy, you don't worry about self-actualization and how good I feel about myself today. They're just trying to put food on the table. So it's a story East versus West, and that's not going to change. What we need is a couple of good crises, okay? A good kick in the ass in the West when power doesn't work, brownouts happen, then we'll learn the lessons. But to me, I've never argued that it should be all nuclear. I've always said it should be a part of the mix. And America has about 20%. And I think if anything Trump will do, if you listen to his speech, he says we need to provide support for the nuclear plants. If you listen to his speech, he didn't say, oh yeah, we're going to really help make sure Jeff and Amir are richer on their stock. What he said was, no, we're actually going to help the nuclear plants.
Well, there you go. So that's a great point, because in terms of East versus West, okay, I hear what you're saying. There's a role for nuclear. There's a role for lots of different types of energy sources. There's, with these, long life storage batteries coming on board, they can store energy for renewable. It's all good. It's all good. Technology is helping us. But I want to come back to this lobbyist point. What's happened with the shares today? We will find out what's happened. Wait till Monday, I guess. And decision potentially on next week from Trump on 232. But the US is a particularly difficult position because of the way their politics is. These lobbyists are powerful. They're powerful. They can buy votes. They can buy behavior. And that's why I say when the gas and fossil fuels are outspending nuclear by, 10 to 1. I'm going to be generous. It looked like 20 to 1 to me. That affects decisions by Trump and the Senate.
But also Trump's the same guy that Hillary spent 100 times more than he did, and she got her ass kicked. So you can spend all the money on bullshit you want. I also believe in truth, and I believe that, again, it's a rural. So you talked about East versus West. Now let's talk about. I live the bullshit you guys hear in England is from New York and LA. Now let's get our head out of our asses and see the rest of the country.
Yeah.
And you will see, I think that she only won like 5% of the counties, but there was a lot of people there, which are all liberal, left-wing socialists who want to steal our money through taxes. So that's my position is clear on it. I'm a libertarian. You go to the rest of America, they don't think like that. And for every one of those, they can lobby all they want, but what are they? Okay, you got to remember the left are so screwed up. They want clean energy, but they want, you see, they're competing against each other. Okay, no. The oil money is competing against the green people, but the green people, if they have honesty and integrity, will say nuclear needs to be a part of it. So I'm not worried. You know what? I don't stay up at night thinking about what I don't control. What I stay up at night thinking about what I do control.
No, I hear you, Dev. But what I'm saying is, it's an environment which is complex and has many influencers. But what you can't take away from all of this is the fact that this demand is growing. That's happening. So I buy the fact that Trump may decide not to help out, Amir and Jeff, but he's going to have to help out the reactors, whether it's to extend lives, sustain it. It's possibly a very cheap solution in reality, but we shall see.
I'll tell you what they need to do is continue to get rid of all this ridiculous red tape. The way the governments work, they're in cahoots, I believe, with all these professional organizations. I think it's the mafia myself. What they do is saying, if you want to lift a piece of dirt, have 500 tests done, and that's going to cost you $100,000. So they got to get rid of unnecessary regulation for explorers, number one. Okay, some are just dumber than dumb. The federal, what Obama did while he was in power, there's subtle little things to mess up people's lives, especially farmers' lives, ranchers' lives. Get rid of those rules. If they're gonna help anything, give credits and etc. Absolutely help the nuclear industry. He must, and he's mentioned that. He didn't say ever, I was going to help the producers. He was going to make it easier for they must have. Perry's right. They need to have a far better source. At one time, they used to remember they produced 40 million pounds, needed 4. Now they need 50, produce 700,000. So it's their own problem. Fix the problem. Stop trying to ruin other people's lives through your own crazy socialist policies.
Okay, I hear you. So what do you think the impact, therefore, is going to be on these reactors if spot price increase? It's got to for the producers. Impact on reactors doesn't matter. It doesn't matter as long as the subsidies come, or because they're not going to be able to put the prices up. The gas guys are going to make sure they can't put the prices up, right? Because they're going to be much cheaper.
I don't know. I don't control that shit. All I can tell you is that the cost of actual fuel is so small. Okay, like you're only talking 5% of your overall cost is fuel. So uranium goes from, let's say, 25 to 50. Gee, they went out to 7.5%. So it's not an issue for us, the price.
It's not an issue for you, but if you're only making 5% or making less than 5%, that price increase is a large proportion of your margin, right? But the point comes back.
Trust me on this one.
Okay.
I've done the math with some pretty smart people, and I did take second-year calculus in college. Uranium had to go to $200 a pound until it was the same impact on the balance sheet as the debt. Because you got to remember, we're only providing the little yellow cake. They have to put it, they process it, put it in the little thing. I went through the whole. it when it gets in, that's just, it's like pencils in your office, means nothing, right?
Okay.
The question is, at the end of the day, what does it cost per kilowatt? Nothing else matters. What will it cost per kilowatt, right?
Okay.
That's all that matters when people are making decisions where to get their energy, right? That's what matters. And so I believe it can go, I do believe it can go to 100, and it will literally impact mom and pa's bill $5. Instead of going 100, it's 105. It's a very small rounding error for because it's the overall cost of building a reactor. So when people talk about, sometimes people confuse fuel when they hand a rod over to stick in and get it going. No, it's what it takes to get to the rod is very expensive.
There's polarizing debates about this on, well, certainly on our platform and chat rooms.
You know, like I said, I think it was an opportunist move by Jeff, and Amir joined, I understand. And I don't think they had any idea the vast implications it would cause drop prices. And I wonder if they would do it again today. You know, Jeff and Amir worked very hard to build those companies from scratch, and I admire people who stick it out, and I always will. But I will not support their decision because they basically tried to say, we're special, get free, we're corporate begging. I don't like corporate begging. I think it's immoral and it's wrong. Now, do they need to make changes in the way they explore uranium down there and give them some flow? To just say we want someone to give us more money so we can put these on wasn't right, Mike.
No, I don't know. I hear you loud and clear on that one. So let's talk about the impact for you. You know, when do you guys get into production?
Well, we're not getting into production until, and the way we said always was, the mid-20s. So it could be 24, 26, depending how the rules are. But,
right.
You know, again, it's East-West story. The Chinese got 1,000 people back there cranking numbers, and they all know in the early 20s is where the big shortage comes. Like we said, I think 1 billion pounds is uncontracted for over the next 8 years.
Well, let's talk about that, actually, because obviously CGN are a massive shareholder of yours, right? Huge. They're in there. They're working with you. You're working with them. You rate them as a great company. Geopolitics doesn't apply here in the way that we've been talking about, does it?
I think it does in our case now. I think that unfortunately we have an incompetent drama teacher running our country. Unfortunately, they don't teach economics, business negotiation, finance, marketing. They didn't teach any of that in drama school, last I checked. And we have a result of that. We have an incompetent individual who can dance, has good hair, and a great puppet for the George Soros of the world. But unfortunately, we got a problem with China, and it could have impact on what we do. I'm just giving you a full disclosure. I'm not. However, I just gone to actually, a fellow from Hong Kong was here, and we're talking about a financing. He says we're fine. He has no issue with it, but it does. I mean, you know, everything has a butterfly effect in this world. As long as there's a guy named Trump in power, you know, Trump just he doesn't care sometimes what happens. He's trying to get a point across, and sometimes, you know, like I always said, I've never liked how he does things, but he gets things done. But but it's that I prefer a more presidential approach, but we're not going to get that. We're asking M&A fighter to start boxing, you know, the old rules of Duxbury, and he wants to kick you in the nuts. So I think he's going to be trouble for a while.
Dev, I'm beginning to think you've got a problem with authority. Don't like Trudeau, don't like Trump.
Stupidity. I have a problem with stupidity.
Great answer. So just to finish off, you don't really care what happens next week, just you need certainty. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's it. You know, and you know what? Again, you control what you control. Wherever the stock goes, we'll raise some money. I've got some bankers I've been speaking to on a regular basis. You know, I've gone to London twice. I've gone to Hong Kong. This in the last month or two. And I said, I don't know when the penny will drop, when it is. I need to be able to pick up the phone and talk to you about it. And they said, we love the name. Flow through people love the name. A bunch of guys. A lot of our people. My concern is that it was people have high expectations of what stocks will do. Now this is out of the way, and so maybe all you're going to see is them drop and we stay where we are. I don't know. But I've seen NextGen was up this morning. I haven't checked since we've been talking, but we'll start to see it, I think.
Yeah. No, I think next week will be interesting with the share prices and getting a better understanding of what is going on out there. Dev, lovely to talk to you as always. I loved listening to what you had to say, and we got to do this again soon. And you've threatened to buy me a pint. You still haven't delivered.
Well, I'm actually coming to London end of this month for one of these week-long weddings that my family's famous for. But you probably should rename your show Uranium by Howard Stern, and you should just deepen your voice and take the tie off and grow your hair long. Put a wig on.
I just haven't got what it takes, Dev. I know you have. So
thanks very much for watching. We hope you enjoyed that. And if you did, please click the button in the corner of the screen to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also catch us on our website, cruxinvestor.com, and Cruxcast, our podcast series. Plus, most days you can catch us on LinkedIn and Twitter. We'd love getting your feedback, so please keep that coming, and we'll speak to you again soon.